All right. Welcome, everybody. My name is Dr. Fayaz. I'm the person who's always mentioning things on Instagram and the WhatsApp groups. Today, I have two wonderful advisors with myself. We have Dr. Shilpa Rao and Dr. Hamza Farouk. So we'll start off with Dr. Rao. Let me briefly speak about her, and thank you to both of them for giving us their time today. Now, Dr. Rao, is the screen visible to you? All right. If you would tell us a little bit about yourself, Dr. Rao.
Sure. Hey, everyone. My name is Shilpa Rao. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. So my name is Shilpa Rao, and I'm currently doing research at the University of Alabama at Birmingham. And I have applied for the match that sneaks in and hopeful to match.
Absolutely. And she's a Harry Potter geek and she likes
Oh, yes, I can. I read Harry Potter to relieve my stress. So.
All right. I can't remember the last book I read. It was so long ago.
I'm currently on a repeat series of all the books, and I'm currently on 5th book.
If that is not dedication, then I don't know what is. All right. So next, we will mention Dr. Nishi. She's trying to join us if possible. She has also applied for the current match, and she is very strongly advocating for psychiatry. So for anybody who's interested in that. And then we have Dr. Hamza Farouk, who not only is here as an advisor, but he's also the co-founder of XME Medical. You can get more information about them through the hyperlink that I have. So Dr. Farouk, if you would tell us a few words about yourself.
Oh, a few words. That doesn't even start. Hi, everyone. My name is Hamza Farouk. I am the co-founder of XME Medical, a virtual healthcare platform that, like Dr. Tabby, we help students like yourselves to apply for the USMLE. We help prepare you for the USMLE exam, and hopefully, that leads to residency. No guarantees, though. I want to make that crystal clear so you guys don't come at me at the end. But besides that, I'm applying for general surgery for residency, and hopefully ready to get that match. And I guess a fun fact about me, like Dr. Tabby has mentioned, I'm a 2nd degree black belt in Taekwondo. I don't know what else to tell you guys.
So we will be friends with you, Dr. Farouk, essentially. All right, guys. So I'm going to do is briefly talk about professionalism. The reason we're going to do that is that relates to both research, US clinical experience, and in fact, any interaction you're going to have from this point onwards with anybody related to your residency journey. And then Dr. Rao will share words of wisdom about research, and then Dr. Farouk will talk about US clinical experience. So in the beginning, I have a few platforms that people use. And excuse my voice, I think it's just something going around. Commonly, LinkedIn is used the most. So Dr. Rao and Dr. Farouk, which platforms do you have your profiles on?
So I have my profiles on LinkedIn and also on Twitter. So just having a profile does not matter. You have to increase your circles in those profiles. Just go and start liking. If like you're on Twitter, just go and start liking the specialty of your choice. You can start off with IMG stories, Met Twitter, and if you're into surgery, just go to specific programs. Each program have a Twitter handle of themselves. So you can go start liking them all just to stay connected with the entire community. And eventually, when you have something to post, you will have a good audience who can view that. But I cannot stress more about a professional profile or professionalism more, because it's going to be really, really important.
I totally agree with that. I do apologize for my voice, and I woke up this morning and just my voice is dead. But I do have a LinkedIn. I have a Linktree and Twitter. Twitter and LinkedIn are the most used platforms around, and they are great for networking. If you're starting out in med school, if you're even in your first year, just start networking, see where it goes. There's no harm in that, you know. Be professional about it though. Don't be sending like rude texts or messages directly to another person's account, but you know, be genuine about it. Follow, I believe Twitter has different groups that you can join in. They're like little like spaces that you can join in, and I forgot what it's called. It's like a workspace type of things. So a lot of people that I know have gone into that, and it's amazing actually. Dr. Tabby, I think you're muted.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that information. I was trying to manage the screen. Let's see, we'll have to try this one again. So I had some slides on which Twitter handles you can access. All right, so here we are. There is Inside the Match. That is the one that's responsible for putting in a lot of information for all specialties. So I highly recommend that we certainly follow that one. The IMG journey is also very helpful. And then just like Dr. Rao and Dr. Farouk mentioned, if you're interested in a subspecialty, i.e. internal medicine, pediatrics, just put in that into Twitter and you'll find out all the active accounts that are related to that and just follow them. Also, when you make any tweets or you post anything, you generally can tag those people. But like we said earlier, please make sure that it's professional language. And also something to keep in mind for tweets. Once you put out a tweet, it's very difficult to get rid of it. So make sure that whatever you do put out, it is something that was well thought out, if it's your professional platform. So after having said that, we will move on to just a few other elements for professionalism. This one basically covers email interactions. You can go through it, certainly. We get a lot of requests on if I want to reach out to somebody for research, if I want to reach out to them for US clinical experience, how do I format my email? So the general idea is that your email title is going to be very direct. Whatever it is that you're asking for, make sure you put it there, possibly put your name next to it. When we put residency emails for various reasons, we have an AAMC ID, so you can attach that ID. But if you're asking for research or US clinical experience, you obviously don't have an ID allotted to you already. Then you start off with a greeting. Is generally the day, so it's the time of the day, good morning, or dear, something along those lines. And you have more examples here on the hyperlink that says more options. Then you just get to the basic of it. Briefly introduce yourself, who you are, what is it that you're asking for, and this is where you will link your professional profile. Or if someone is very interested in getting to know you, then they can go and check out your credentials. Now, Dr. Rao and Dr. Farouk, I will ask you guys, do you suggest attaching your CV before sending out emails for either research or US clinical experience?
Okay, am I going first? Okay.
Yes, I was waiting on you.
So yeah, I would highly suggest attaching a CV, but also briefly mention your credentials or something important that is on your CV on the email. Just if you're reaching out to a program or to a specific person, which is not really like, if it is not really published a paid spot or a paid clinical experience or something like that, you're doing it by yourself, then I would highly recommend you to write your story in that email, like just a few basics about your background, where you're coming from, what you've done. Say if you're here just after medical school, mention your medical school. They will not know which medical school that is. Mention briefly about that this is like one of the top institutes in my country, and I have passed out of it with great scores. I'm here looking for an opportunity such that I can eventually match it to residency, and I'm seeking this out because I would like to gain some experience in it. Something in those lines, along with your CV.
I completely agree. So my personal experience that if you're applying for electives, they're going to ask for your CV anyways. It's like applying for a job, right? You have to be, but make sure before you attach that CV, it's properly formatted. It's very professional. It's like in my day, I did not have people tell me like, what does a CV look like? We were in med school years, or how it should be formatted. But these stuff, you can easily Google it up. You can Google a professional template. You can Google a professional layout of how your CV should be. Uh, if you're applying for electives, it's the same way for research. They're gonna ask for it sooner or later. So it's best to attach it with the email with a proper, like you said, a background about yourself, who you are, especially if you're an IMG. I am a US IMG. So for me, it was that before I sent out my professional, I had to write my own, paragraph describing who I am, where I came from, this is the university I attended, and why I'm applying to this research program as well. And with that, like in the beginning, the mistake I did was I did not attach my CV in the end. But some of them are very nice. They'll like reply back to you and be like, can you please send us your CV? And then we can make this process go forward. So it is important.
All right, thank you so much for sharing that, guys. Before we move forward, I'll go ahead and address someone who asked me to repeat the names of the 2 Twitter handles. So on this presentation, if you guys go to slide 5, it's inside the match and the IMG journey. Those 2 are definitely some I would encourage, and then obviously the specialty specific you would have to find out. So with that being addressed and professionalism, we will just briefly touch on verbal professionalism. Now, guys, everybody comes from different backgrounds, and that is perfectly fine. But if you are applying to US residency, then ideally you would be comfortable with the most common language spoken here, which is English. So just something to help yourself out. Again, it's not mandatory, but something to help yourself out is to possibly work on conversational English. And a good place to start would be podcast, if you're someone who enjoys listening to that. If you're someone who enjoys reading, then you can go to this website that I have linked. And obviously movies are always there. But just wanted to make sure that we address this as well. With that, we'll go to research and we'll ask Dr. Rao to share any pieces of advice that she has before I go into the slides that already have information that she has graciously shared with us.
Sure, yeah. So I'm not really sure how many people here have already entered the match process. But for people who are starting out, I would like to briefly tell you that the application process for the USMLE match. So one part of the application process is the STEPS course, which everybody widely knows. So that definitely plays a huge role in your application. But along with that, there are about 3 things which are also a part of your application, which has some role to play, especially if you want to stand out. So those are work experience, research experience, and volunteer experience. So when it comes to work experience, all your US clinical rotations, observerships, clerkships, externship, or any kind of medical interaction that you've had in USA, they all come under your work experience. And in your volunteer experience, anything that you did not get paid for, be it medicine, non-medicine, all of that comes under your volunteer experience. Even if you volunteered to just give away food, donate, or help around during COVID, that also counts as a volunteer experience. And you're supposed to have some volunteer experience and some work experience. And with that being said, the other component is research experience. So research experience does not really mean that you have to have publications. So when you apply for residency, you'll have 2 sections in your application. One is the number of publications that you have, and the other one is the papers that you have submitted or in the process. And the other is poster presentations or oral presentations. And apart from that, you have a separate section for just research experience, where you can talk about what role you played during the project, whether you participated in collecting data or just participated in reviewing the manuscript, or anything that you did research related, all that counts. So just if an eventual publication is not the only thing that matters. The amount of work that you put in, that counts. So I would highly suggest people that who are even in the process of studying in med school or graduated, just get involved with some kind of research. One, it will provide you with great context, which will help you along the way, which is important. And B, it will definitely help you bolster your CV. I think that's about it.
All right, thank you so much for that, Dr. Rao. So what I'm going to do is share our screen now on the research advice that we have. If this presentation is not accessible to you, please let me know so that everybody's on the same page as we go through it. All right, so Dr. Rao did a wonderful job covering everything that you need to know about why is research important and how do you talk about it. So we'll further discuss how to do your application for residency in our seminar next. You have all the information about the seminars on our Instagram page, or you can always text me and ask me when it's being done. But coming back to research, so we have this here. There's a list of opportunities for research that you can go through. One thing that Dr. Rao was emphasizing before we started this presentation is that you would have to reach out actively to get these opportunities. Dr. Rao, could you share how long it took you to get the opportunity that you really wanted for research?
Sure, yeah. So when I started off, it was still in the peak of pandemic. So I did not have luck with most of the paid opportunities. And I was mostly looking at opportunities which were close to where I lived, which was in the Southeast. But unfortunately, I couldn't find anything close to my place. So it literally took me like 2-3 months of active reaching out. But before that, there was a lot of hard work going on about just finding the right place. So I would definitely suggest that during my time when I did this, the step 1 score was still being given out. There was no pass and fail. So we had to really struggle to just get a great score. So I started doing the search for opportunities after I finished my step 1. And before I even started my step 2, I had actively moved to a position, and it was a volunteer position, but I had to take it. I know it was a difficult decision, but I knew I needed it. So yeah, I would say probably around 2-3 months just for somebody to respond positively and be open to accept me.
Thank you for that. So through that, guys, we get an idea that you obviously have to plan ahead. And I know we all understand it's a very hectic journey, but the more you plan ahead, the easier it's going to be for you. But what are the exact steps that we need to do? So in the following slides, we have a lot of wonderful advice from Dr. Rao, who's here with us today, Dr. Nadeem, and then Dr. Sahajpal. Essentially, Dr. Nadeem highlighted for us that there's 3 ways to reach out for research: through contacts, which is the most obvious, personalized emails. This is why we were talking so extensively about professional communication earlier, and then a generic email, which might or might not be fruitful for you. Now, if this is applicable to you, if you are indeed a Canadian applicant, then there is some information here for you as well that could be helpful. But as you can see, the advisor here, this is from Dr. Rishika, she applied to 100 to 150 positions and then was able to land the opportunity she wanted. And then lastly, we have thorough explanation of how to go through paid positions and then unpaid positions. I highly encourage you to go through this presentation later. I don't want to read lines off for you so that we can open the Q&A as soon as possible. And last slide on research is, again, Dr. Rao's wonderful advice and pointers. So with that being said, we have about 10 minutes for any questions that are related to research. As soon as we're done with that, we'll move forward to US clinical experience with Dr. Hamza Farouk. So I will stop this here, and then Dr. Rao, I will send the questions. If at this point, does anybody have any questions to ask Dr. Rao? You can either type it in the chat or you can use the reactions and raise your hand. And last point, Dr. Rao, you were going to speak to us about research fellowships.
Right. I'm not really sure about what specialty people are looking at here, but I know for a fact that the competition for a successful match has greatly increased. So just if you want to stand out, if you want to increase your chances of a match, or bolster your CV maybe, it's always nice to have a component of research in your CV. And if you're dedicating a year or two for research, just so that you stand out for a competitive specialty, maybe general surgery, or I don't know if pediatrics is also getting a little difficult right now, or any other competitive specialty, yeah, it would be nice to spend a year to do research, mostly because you get to know what is actually happening there, and increase the pointers that are there on your CV, and also network, which is highly important. So if you're spending a year dedicated for research, I would highly recommend to look out for research fellowships that are available under specific specialties. So if you are applying to do general surgery, go to the general surgery main website. They will have a few fellowships which are published there. And also there are specific specialty Discord groups, Telegram groups, like somebody mentioned on the chat, or Twitter handles. So they post that there. And if at all you need a visa, they would post that a visa requiring IMG could also participate in this. It's usually written out there before they post it. So you can apply to them directly with a cover letter and your CV, and they usually have a link for the application process. So you can use that. That would cover, that would also cover your expenses, and also be great to get the research opportunity and also network.
All right, thank you for that. So we have our questions lined up, starting off with, do you suggest applying to paid research positions via platforms like Indeed, Glassdoor, or is it still better to just directly email the researchers or physicians?
If there are paid positions which are put out there, then it's an easy bait for you to take it. One thing, it's an official position which you can put it on a CV. That will go a long way. You can say it's a degree fellowship in research, and that will really help you in your academic career later on. And secondly, you'll get paid, which is always great, even if it is for coffee. And thirdly, it will help your network, because they will want you to do more during that fellowship. They will push you to do more, and you can have great oral and poster presentations. So when you're doing a dedicated research year and you're applying for a competitive fellowship, it would be nice that eventually you would have at least 2 or 3 papers submitted, and at least 1 or 2 poster and oral presentations, which you learn along the way during your research process. It's a little hard to understand that before you actually start out, but once you're in research, you can obviously reach out here to anybody would help you to understand that. But once you're in a dedicated research period, I would highly suggest to give your full. Always be there, be on time. And even if somebody does not tell you, okay, you can go to submit that abstract and go do that presentation, you should volunteer yourself, show some enthusiasm, tell people that, hey, we are doing this project, a little bit of the project is completed. Do you think we can submit this abstract for the conference? People love that. People love people who can show more dedication, and also show that they are willing to take a step further.
All right, thank you. Also, Dr. Rao, do you need letters of recommendation for research positions? And if so, who should provide those?
If it's a paid position, they will have the criteria already specified there. So usually you would need a CV, your cover letter, and if you're an IMG, depending on the specialty, they will have that written there. So if it's a really competitive residency or fellowship position for research, they would expect to have 1 or 2 letters of recommendation that should usually come from your professors from your home country, medical school, or any other, if at all you've done any other kind of training.
And should those letters mention anything about research or your enthusiasm for it?
Yeah, if you do not have an experience in research, then obviously that does not really help. I mean, it is okay not to have any research experience. That is why you're taking out this position, right? So, but if somebody can speak about the kind of person you are, about how reliable, honest, and how hardworking you are, that goes a long way.
All righty, thank you. So Dr. Rao, we'll take a couple more questions and then we'll move on to U.S. clinical experience. Is it easy to get research opportunities in institutions like Harvard Medical School for internal medicine or interventional cardiology? So it's a very subspecialty.
Okay, that's a very specific question, but Harvard is Harvard. Nothing is easy. Nothing comes in a silver platter in USA. You have to work hard for it. And if it's a position that's just put out from Harvard, if it is out there, I would just suggest go grab it. Do whatever you can, grab it. It really helps in your CV eventually. But it's not easy. The hard truth.
And this is what we appreciate about you, is that you went through all this difficult everything, and then you're sharing all this valuable information that I can only imagine was not easy for you to put together.
That's completely fine. I'm here to give back. I know that the path is not easy, but sharing information like this really helps people in the future. And I think more IMGs should do that because there is no information available out there. So yes, I think we should definitely thank you and Dr. Farooq for coming out and helping everybody out, because we need more people like you.
And you're staying with us, Dr. Rao.
Yes. Yeah.
We're not letting you go right now.
So with that, we will get to the last question. Now, guys, we understand there's a time limit that we try to stay in, but that does not mean we're not here to help you guys. We do have the WhatsApp groups. So if you have leftover questions from this, you are more than welcome to reach out to me. I will send them to Dr. Rao, or you can just join the US Research Experience or Research Advice group that I have. We say advice because we're just here to share experience. We can't guarantee any positions. So if you decide to join that group, Dr. Rao is on there, so she can guide you. One small request I have, guys, be respectful of our advisors' times. So if you have anything that you need, we're absolutely here, but I would like for you to address it in the group. Personal questions, but DMs just get very difficult to stay on top of. So our last question, Dr. Rao, is about CV. In your work experience, can you include your medical school clerkships that were done outside of the US?
Definitely, yeah. Go all gaga about it and go into details about it. So there's nothing wrong with it. I know that we as IMGs are not great in boasting about ourselves, but some healthy boasting is important.
All right. So the last few points, I'll go ahead and address those. Is research important for internal medicine, family medicine? To be clear, research is important. It's not necessarily a specialty specific thing anymore. So if you have it, it will help you. If you don't have it, obviously we do not encourage that you worry about it. If you don't have it, that's what it is, but try to get it. Lastly, for those of us asking questions about what is volunteer, where do we put this? If you're applying for Match 2024, we do have a session coming up about residency application. So in that, and it's a free session, we'll discuss all of this. So you can certainly come to that one. So with that, Dr. Rao, thank you so much for your time. Any last minute, any moments, a few moments of advice or anything for us?
Yeah, certainly. I would definitely say don't worry and fear that, okay, you do not have this in my CV. I still don't have this. Don't go worrying or stressing out about it. Things will happen. Take one thing at a time. And like Dr. Tapi suggested, think ahead of time, because just having a compartmentalized thinking that, okay, I'm going to get done with this now, and then I'm going to think about that, will not help, because we have limited time. And the more gap years that you have, the more explanations that you will have to give during your journey. So think ahead of time, even while you're preparing, try to spend an hour or two on any kind of help that you could provide during research for anybody who's doing research, and try to collaborate if you're not officially present in some university, but ask that in a nice and professional way. Reach out to people who are actually doing that professionally, and I would highly discourage people doing that who are doing it just for the benefit of money, because you're going to be questioned about it. Just having not doing it and saying doing it, is you're going to get questioned about it, and if somebody realizes that this is fake, then you're out of that interview. So just be honest in whatever you do, think ahead of time, and try to apply actively if you're looking for a paid position or an unpaid position, and things will work out. It eventually will.
Thank you, Dr. Rao, for that motivation and that positivity, which is actually very rare.
I understand that. Yeah. I've realized that motivation is the key for everything.
Thank you. So Dr. Rao, you're more than welcome to stay with us. We're going to now cover the U.S. clinical experience, which is another big part of applying to residency. So with that, I will start off with Dr. Farouk. Any words you have to share before we share the slides for this?
Actually, a couple. US clinical electives and US observerships are two different things. And I think for an IMG, the most difficult thing you could ever do is to find an elective. But there are different pathways. It's not the end out of that. I cover this in all my sessions before I get into the nitty-gritty details of everything. The most common three things is, as Dr. Rao discussed, is networking is very important. Even if you're going for electives, a lot of doctors have, if you look at their hospital website or whatever, they have their email address there. Respectfully, you can send them a message. You may not get a response back, and that's okay. But you can send them a message and see where it goes. What's the worst thing that can do? Rejection, right? That's suiting you up for life. Getting rejected is part of the journey. Don't worry. I've been through it a bunch of times, and I can't even count as many. Dr. Rao and Dr. Tabby, I've sent over like more than 150 emails back in my day. And from that, I only got responded like only 10. That was still something.
Wow, that's dedication.
It's dedication, but respectfully, I put it in a proper format. I emailed them that this is the electives I'm looking for. This is the specialty. Do you have anything available? The second thing is, I know a lot of IMG have a struggle of paying for the electives, and that's completely okay. That's where networking comes in. If you can't pay, you can always network and you can get an elective for free. I don't normally tell people this, but if you know the doctor and that person knows someone, they can bring you on board to have you rotate in the hospital for 4 weeks. You'll get something out of it. If not, then there are other ways. There's different programs you can apply to, and most of them cost I know they're expensive, like $1,000, $1,500 sometimes. They can go over to 3,000, but these are useful. They set you up with a living arrangement, especially if you're an IMG. They help you with your visa structure, and they will set you up at that hospital for 4 weeks or 8 weeks, whatever you like. The third pathway is that I didn't know this till I got to the rotation myself, is that once you start with a rotation, you can go through different hospitals surrounding in your area. So like I did one of my electives at Baylor St. Luke's in Houston, right? And I was working with this one doctor, and around there was another hospital, right? I asked them, I went there, I asked them, do you guys take, USIMG students for electives? Is it possible for me to rotate? And they were like, yeah, we do. For $1,000, we can have you. If I did not have the courage to go up to that hospital and speak with them kindly in that way, I wouldn't have known that information. So these are 3 pathways that you can go through to finding a US clinical elective. And guys, I know this is being long, and we will cover this later in the slides that Dr. Tabby has prepared. A lot of, if you can cater your US elective to the specialty, but it's not necessary. When you're applying for a residency match, it can be broad, but if you're having a surgery specialty, you can cater your elective to that specialty. That means coming from a third world country to over here, it's just giving them an opportunity to get to know you, that you've been here and you have the experience and you are used to the system that we use here, whether it's Epic or eClinical Works, that you have some sort of experience on that. And that's a little bit of advice I can give right now, but we will go on the slideshow now.
All right, thank you so much for that, Dr. Farouk. So just to jump on off some of the topics that you talked about. So this season, guys, when we were doing dedicated mocks, which is the thing that Resiyay supports Resiyay, the whole platform, I interviewed more than 100 applicants for my dedicated mocks. Out of majority of them will have rotations outside of their specialty. So let me give some examples. Someone is a surgery specialty, then they would have done internal medicine or family medicine, logically, because it's easier to find those in the clinical setting, in the outpatient setting. But then there will also be individuals who are applying to internal medicine, but in the home country, they did a different residency. So when it comes to things of that nature, there are ways that you have that you should be able to explain it. And then again, going off of Dr. Rao and Dr. Farouk, be honest, be clear in what you're trying to say, and have a sharp answer, a very concise answer. Some general hints that I will share is that it's very acceptable that while you were searching for the specific rotation that you wanted, for example, if it's Gen Surg, you did an internal medicine inpatient rotation because you wanted to learn about the US clinical system. And you wanted to get your hands-on experience about EMR. Also, you wanted to learn about HIPAA, about the policies in the US, basically get into the system. That is very widely known and accepted. But for example, if you're applying to internal medicine and all of your rotations are psychiatry, that could be frowned upon. So you just have to balance, all right, can this be understandable or not? And if this is something that you need to discuss, then obviously we're here for that. So with that, let me share the slides that we have for US clinical experience. Just starting right off the bat, there are different types of US clinical experience. So most of us, when we are in university, even if you're going to a university in a different country, you can do US clinical experience and it will be considered a clerkship or an elective. So if you're currently fourth year medical student, I believe some universities have fifth year medical students, that is ideally the best time to do a rotation. What would we say about that, Dr. Farouk and Dr. Rao? Did you do any of your rotations when you were a medical student?
I did, and that's why it was considered as an elective. And if I had done it after I graduated, it would have been considered as an observership or an externship. So guys, the one thing I want to put in here is that inpatient, like Dr. Tabby discussed, it is very hard to get, but it's not impossible, because of COVID. And after that, getting inpatient rotations gotten much harder because hospitals wouldn't want you to come from, out of the country and situate with that. But if you find an outpatient, that is also great, and the way you can boost yourself into those positions of inpatient is after you've taken your step 1 exam. After you've taken your step 1 exam, it makes more sense. You can do electives before, but some universities, especially my university, we weren't allowed to do elective until we got to third year, which made sense. You need to have some sort of clinical knowledge before you get into that position for yourself. And that's where step 1 comes in handy. You have covered your basics, you have gone through that, and you can then apply for these, externships or electives, and it opens up more opportunity after you've taken step 1 that some of these electives require. Besides that, there are a lot of other things that they require that I'll get into later on. But if you are doing an elective, I think it'd be just a fun fact. It'd be a great opportunity for you to just, start step 2 as well, because step 2 will correlate with whatever elective you are doing, and it's going to help you a long way. That's one of the things a senior once told me once I got to, doing my rotations around here. Dr. Rao, do you have any input on this?
That was great, Dr. Farooq. Unfortunately, I did not have a lot of input about this because I decided about a US residency long after I finished my medical school. So, but with that being said, I included my US clinical experience during the process of my research. So whenever I had some free time, I would go professionally and nicely ask if I could shadow the faculty during their clinics. I'm applying for a surgical specialty, so I would request if I could go see a procedure if I was really interested in it. So whenever I had some free time, I would spend that in the OR or in the clinics. So that in a way, I did not have to pay like thousands of dollars for that. And also I got my experience that was a necessity for the application. So yeah.
And that's a really good point. So guys, there are multiple pathways obviously to this. So just like Dr. Farooq, you can do it while you're in medical school. Or like Dr. Rao, if you get your US clinical experience later, it's still experience. But we wanted to touch on, so externships, electives are heavily understood, tele-rotations. Now I will share the next slide that has, if you follow the second link, it says non-VSLO rotations or virtual rotations. Tele-rotations are still US clinical experience, but you have to understand there's a hierarchy. The hierarchy are electives, which you're in medical school, then later hands-on experience, inpatient, ideally, if not mix. A lot of clinics do outpatient with mixed with inpatient. So once the doctor has built more rapport with you, they're more confident in your skills, they will take you to the hospitals where they practice at as well. And then one of the last bits on that tier would be tele-rotations, which candidates have done. Sitting in home country, they're doing their residency for whichever specialty, and they don't have the flexibility to stop their training and come to the US. But I would like everyone to understand that those candidates are currently doing home country residency, not internship, not the mandatory one-year training you do after you finish your medical school. So for those candidates, typically tele-rotation can be understood. But I would still say that tele-rotation is the last resort, not necessarily your first line. What would you say about that, Dr. Farooq?
I was about to mention this. Any experience is still experience. It's like an icing on your cake on your application. It's not going to be frowned upon, but it is one of the, you have a hierarchy. It is one of the lowest setting. But obviously, if you're becoming a doctor, you want to step your foot inside the hospital, get that, experience from the US, because in your interviews, they will ask you a little bit about this, and they want to make sure I like to say it in this way, you're applying for a job interview, right? You're applying for a job. They want to make sure, do you know the system around here a little bit? Have you worked with us? Because it's, for me, rotations in Pakistan, that's where I did my, graduated from Dow International Medical College. When we did our clinical rotations over there, it was way different than when I came over here. Over there was a lot of standing around and they'll just explain things to you. And I didn't get my hands into a lot of things, which is a fact. But when I came here, they asked me questions. We had meetings. They actually taught, like if you're working with a cardiologist, he will show you like an EKG report, he'll show you atrial fibrillation, he'll walk you through it. Patient has SVT. I know I'm putting in a lot of medical terms right now. He'll tell me that, okay, if a patient comes in with SVT, you will give IV amiodarone after that, So a lot of things I worked in while I was doing my rotation here, and a lot, all my basic knowledge about clinical experience and everything, it kind of suited me in. That's all I want to say for that. Telerotation is great. It's not terrible, but you have to, if you do get a chance, I would recommend, getting that elective abroad.
All right, thank you for those words of wisdom. So again, on here, we have a few of the social media platforms. We're already familiar with the IMG journey. There are 2 other platforms. It's just a game of how many people you know and how you network. So if you can get your hands on anybody, or you can try to get to know someone, doors will open for you. Unfortunately, I personally cannot speak about a lot of this because I'm a Caribbean IMG. I did all of my rotations in Chicago. So we didn't have to worry about this or that. But these are still good resources for virtual rotations. Now, the group on Resiyay came together and put out few of the paid possibilities for US clinical experience. There are a couple of opportunities on this Google document that you don't have to pay for the rotation, but you still have to pay for your living accommodations. It's a small list, it's growing, but I would definitely encourage you to go through it. The states are there, all of the contact information, everything is there. So you can also start your search. Again, it's the one that says paid possibilities for US clinical experience. Next, I wanted to highlight information from a current student. This individual is a student in a university in Pakistan. I believe they're a fourth-year medical student. They have already given their step 1. And this is the procedure they followed to get a university elective. So specifically, they followed someone's tweets, and then they followed this email template to send out to the programs. Few words on templates. Because it's widely available, everybody or a lot of people are going to be using that. So like we mentioned way in the beginning, I believe Dr. Farouk and Dr. Rao mentioned, add a small paragraph about yourself. Who are you? Where did you go to school? What is it that you're applying for? And then attach your professional profile and then your CV. Anything else we would like to say about this, Dr. Farouk and Dr. Rao?
I think every information is available on Google and Reddit. So it is nice of Dr. Tabby to provide all this information, but guys, you can always search it up. I know there are like factual stuff, but do search up like the most authentic information you can find, but everything will lead you to the same position at the end, And that's how I was when I was in med school. I had to search up a lot of things because we didn't have these live sessions presented to us. We didn't have, that I'm very grateful for. Dr. Tabby has her service going on, I have my thing, and we have authentic information, and it's from our own experience that we're able to present this information to you guys.
Thank you. Dr. Rao, any words on this?
I completely agree with Dr. Farouk. I mean, the information that is being provided here, we had to search for it by calling people, texting them, annoying them, and, so all these are extremely useful. But with that being said, even though the templates are available, I would really suggest write a personalized email for yourself if you're reaching out to programs and people individually, other than the ones which are available, which are posted, such that they know you as a person. And even if it's a rejection, it would be a personalized email, and you never know, you would get some pieces of advice from them. They would tell you, okay, if I know that this did not work out, maybe you can give this a shot. There are a lot of doors which can open up for you, but for that email should really make somebody connect to you. And for somebody to connect to you, they should really get to know who you are, what do you want, what are you looking for. And mostly, rather than saying I'm passionate and I'm very hardworking, you can just give some examples about, this is what I've done and this is what I'm trying to do and this is what I really want to be. Just making that shout out in your emails will definitely give you those responses.
Thank you for that, for both Dr. Farouk and Dr. Rao. Now the following slides, this is for later when you're in US clinical experience, but I still wanted to highlight. So everybody obviously is in medicine, we're from the same background, but every country, every medical system operates in its own way. So here, when you present the patient, typically the accepted format is called SOAP note. It stands for subjective, objective, assessment, and plan. Now, the last two, assessment and plan, we're all very well familiar with. the plan that you're going to have for the patient. The assessment is going to be your supporting diagnoses and why is it a differential diagnosis. But the subjective and objective part I wanted to cover. So there is a lot of text on here. This is why the presentation is provided to you. Subjective part essentially has the patient's primary complaint, which is called chief complaint. Then it has review of systems. And then it has any supportive information, including histories. And there are a lot of histories that you need. So instead of worrying about how am I going to remember everything, here is a mnemonic that was taught to me by an instructor who used to teach for Step 2 CS. And he made it very, very simple for me. So it's here for you. We can go through it. The first part talks about pain. Then most patients, you want to ask about any symptoms of vomiting, diarrhea, and then histories. So again, why are we talking about this? If, for example, Dr. Rao, Dr. Farouk are your attendings, they hand you a patient to go see. Once you get to the patient, you need to get all of this information. Then you go back to your attending and then you tell them this information, but it obviously has to be organized and it has to be efficiently presented. This will help you present that information. And then when you give it to your attending, you tell them chief complaint, you tell them history of present illness, review of systems, and then these histories. You will become very familiar with this when you're in US rotations, but I just wanted you to be familiar with it. The second part is the objective part of SOAP, which is the physical exam. So a few tips on how to do it. Again, each rotation will teach you what they expect, but generally these are the instructions. Now on this, I wanted to again request Dr. Farouk and Dr. Rao, when you were presenting your patients to your attendings, how was that experience for you guys?
For me, it was very different than how we did it back in Pakistan, because we didn't have a system to type. By the way, coming here, you have to scribe a lot and put it in. So that's one of the factors about it. But in Pakistan, what we would do is we would take history taking, but it would be just on top of our head, We'd go through the same what to ask the patient, how to take the history. Over here, like Dr. Tabby put it in the format, you have to do it in order. If a patient comes in, you have to greet them properly. If you're about to perform a physical examination, always wash your hands and always ask beforehand if it's a proper, way. Because male, female, patients, you have to ask if you're a guy or a girl as well, And consent is very important here, which you'll learn soon enough once you start, electives. But besides that, getting to know the system itself, computerized, because when I came here, we worked on eClinical Works. It's a program that a lot of hospitals use, especially clinics. If you're in a hospital setting, you will use Epic. So formatting in that way was very different. I don't know the words for it, but it was like when I first started, I had to ask like my next door person who was also rotating with me. I was like, how do you do this? How do you type in all this? Where do I click? It was a lot of technical stuff. I was like, all right, I can go and take the history of the patient, but how am I supposed to, put it in if I'm taking a physical examination, taking the BMI, height, weight, and all that? Where do I put in over here? So that's where electives come in. It's for you to get the experience because you will be applying for residency here. So you need to know how the system works here rather than, back abroad as well. Dr. Rao, do you have any input on this?
I completely second whatever you just said. I mean, both the components. One is being freely professional and take the consent of the patient before anything that you do, be it asking history or examining them. Always make sure you have their consent because people are watching. There are hawks around you, which you do not know about. So people are really watching, and they will have a kind of mental note of how you are, whether you're behaving properly. So the very first time that I interacted with my patient, the attending who was with me, she asked me if I would be comfortable just doing it by myself, or if I would be comfortable if she would be with me. And I said, maybe I think I would be much more comfortable if I was doing it by myself. But even though I was with the patient between, curtains and nobody was watching, I knew that she was standing right outside, making sure that I was doing fine and the patient was not being offended in any way, because they did not know the kind of teaching, the kind of exposure that we have had. And this is just a guarantee for them that, yes, she can really do this, So just always be on your toes when you're doing this, because, as I've mentioned before in the presentation, this is like an extended interview. People are watching you, and rather than just doing those 4 hours of an actual professional interview that you're going to get for your residency, this is what will really matter. So if you do something really nice, they will always remember. And people talk here just like they do in our home country. So on coffee table with their coffee, they talk about people. So that is definitely there. And secondly, about the system, about learning the medical system here. Just like Dr. Farouk mentioned about EPIC, the system that I had to work with was PowerChart. And even though I have done a previous residency training in my home country, I could not navigate through that system, to be completely honest. I took help. I reached out to people. I reached out to the attendings. They sat down. They were so nice. They sat down, went through it over and over again with me, even though I had tutorials about it. But with that being said, it's okay to say that you do not know how to navigate through the system. And this is why you're doing this, such that you can learn it. And eventually when you apply, you can say with confidence, yes, I know the system and I have learned it. And that's a way, right? That's how you become adaptable and say that is a strength of mine. I adapted the system here and I was good in it. So yeah, so even though things might seem hard initially, they will eventually work out.
Another thing I wanted to add was going off of that is don't be too shy to ask a question if you don't know it, because you're working with a patient's chart, right? So always ask if you're unsure of anything, and a lot of attendees or residents, they will help you. They will, don't be afraid to ask about any question you'll have on the system.
Thank you guys for sharing that. I think along the same lines, before we take any questions, I do want to tell you guys a personal story just to encourage you that in the beginning, everything is new. That's why they say practice makes perfect. So Dr. Rao and Dr. Farouk can join in laughing with me, not at me on this one. When I started my first clinical rotation in internal medicine, my first patient, very first one, I saw the whole patient with a friend of mine who was guiding me through it, and both of us completely forgot to do the physical exam. So we put it into the chart, everything. The chart is a huge deal. It was an EMR system. It was actually eClinicalWorks. It's a huge deal because it's a legal document. So later, if something happens with your patient, the court can order to see that chart. And if you forgot to submit something in it, then that's basically an incomplete legal document. So obviously that experience was not pleasant for me. My attending called me out on it. It was a learning experience. But throughout the rotation, I worked on myself. By the time that I was done with the rotation, he not only gave me a letter of recommendation, but he also handed a lot of the students to me to walk them through the whole process. So yes, you will make mistakes, but that's okay. Just get back on your feet, admit your mistake, never go in front of your attending and make up excuses. And you guys, it will later show up in your LORs. It definitely did for me. Dr. Farouk and Dr. Rao, did you have experiences like mine?
I did. The first time I was doing a rotation, I forgot to ask a couple of questions to the patients, which were critical. But the thing was, this is actually a pretty nice story. The mother, I believe, had sickle cell disease, and the son had thalassemia. And the son would always bring in her mother, even though he was way sicker than, his mother. It was such an emotional story. And the thing was, I was starting out and I didn't know what they had. And there were some questions forgotten, because with them, they're easily bruised, right? And I couldn't, the thing is, I forgot to consent before going for it. I put on my gloves and went for it. And, but later on, I learned though. And the doctor was very nice about it. He told me that you always have to do this. These are questions you have to ask with the patients, even if you don't know the background of that patient. And the nurse that was also there, she was very nice and helped me, learn through that experience. So that's what I was saying, that don't be shy to ask. You will make mistakes, but these are experiences. These are what makes you a better doctor in the future, because how are you gonna be an amazing doctor if you don't make mistakes in the beginning?
I completely agree on that. So not specifically clinically, but I have done a lot of mistakes along my way. And, even if it is not just medicine, the kind of way you speak, like recently, like just a few days ago, when I was just answering to my mentor during a research project that we were discussing, I just answered impulsively. I was like, yeah, for sure. And he was a little taken aback. So, everything counts. And mistakes happen. We're humans, we are not perfect. So yeah, you learn along the way for sure.
Thank you guys for being honest with these experiences. They're just an example. It will happen. So with that, we have a few more moments for any questions that are left over, either for you as clinical experience or research. While you're pondering about those questions, let me show all of us the WhatsApp groups. And once you're in the community page, how do you get access to the group? So it's all open to everybody, but it's a little bit confusing when you have to request the groups. So with that, I will share my screen. So this is the group. It's called Journey to US Residency. So for example, you won't have this. You'll just have this when you join. I will share the link once more while we're going through this. Here we go. Okay, so the WhatsApp community was with all the groups. I try to put as many of the updates as I can on the community page because I understand not all of us have Instagram, and that's perfectly fine. It's not a requirement to be a part of this community. It's just nice to have Instagram to follow along. So when you join, you'll see this page, the Journey to US Residency. You have to click on the title, then you click on groups, and then you will see all of the groups. So for example, if you want to be added to step 1, my screen is a little different than yours. You will click on it and it will ask you, okay, request to be added. And you'll just pick somebody on the list to send the request to. They'll get your request. So I personally will get a message, another admin will get a message, and then we can add you to the group. So that's all you have to do. You can be in as many groups as you like. There's no limitations. The only group that's not open to everybody is the one that says only for advisors, because that's where we all come together and discuss everything. So if you would like to be an advisor, my doors are always open for that, but that's typically for people who can give in some time every now and then and have experiences to share. So that's essentially how you join the WhatsApp groups. I will stop the share now. I see that we have a question. Do you recommend doing US clinical experience through agencies? Will the programs know that you did it through an agency and not like it? All right, so I understand this was a direct question, so I won't say your name. Let me share my feedback on this, and then we'll have the other 2 doctors talk about it. So programs will not necessarily know the agency you used. unless that agency is notorious for giving out LORs from a particular doctor. So doctors are now well recognized. Dr. X gives a LOR to everybody, and he says it's excellent or she's an excellent candidate. That is a red flag because that letter was essentially bought. So that could be one way. And we did recommend earlier, you can use agencies. You just have to be cautious. Are you getting your money's worth? I don't personally promote anyone for that reason. But in the group, the US Clinical Experience Advice Group, you can ask people about their experiences. And if somebody knows something, they'll let you know. What do we think, Dr. Rao and then Dr. Farouk?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. But it's not a bad thing to go look up those groups and do your own research before you commit to it, because obviously it's a lot of money. But if you have like experiences from people that you have known of, it's not a bad thing. Eventually it's for the completion of the application. But make sure that at least if they promised you something, that they do that, rather than you just going around them and trying to beat the bush. But yeah, I'm sure that people who have this open have done a lot of research themselves before they announce it. So there might be some authentication to it, but I personally have no experience in using any of them.
There is a lot of good agencies out there, but the thing is you still have to be cautious because a lot of agency will put you in a clinic setting rather than the hospital itself. Just make sure whatever agency you're going through that they provide you an LOR, because that's what you're working towards, right? An LOR for your application for residency. And just make sure like any LOR is great, but I feel like personally that if it's from a university hospital, that LOR, then it just has more value to it, But yeah, it's not a bad thing to go through an agency. I know a lot of agencies cost a lot of money. Like they will ask for a lot of money, but like I said, like in the beginning of this, that there are other pathways. You can either network around, like I said before, and ask doctors to rotate, or you can look at nearby surroundings. One thing, Dr. Tabby, do we have time? Because I get asked a lot about requirements for electives, and I just want to summarize it in one piece, that do get your paperwork in time if you are applying for electives, because a lot of these electives, they will require, either TOEFL score or letter of intent, or, dean's letter from your university as an IMG, something like that, so just make sure you get those time before you get to the hospital that you're going to be rotating at.
Thank you so much for bringing that up. Actually, Dr. Farouk, that's a wonderful point. You are there for the LOR. And before we move to any questions, we're just going to go back and highlight, guys, if you're there for the LOR, Dr. Rao mentioned wonderful points. They're simple. It's not complicated. Show up not on time, before time. Be that person who shows up 5-10 minutes early. Be that person who goes to their co-student, co-person and says, hey, is there something that you need assistance with? What happens in a lot of these rotations, just the nature of them, because they're IMG friendly, they will have a lot of IMGs. So there will be situations where you are technically struggling to get patients. Your friend has 10 patients and you only got 2 that day. That rotation is not the environment or the place to explicitly talk about it. Sometimes you think maybe if I tell my friend in my rotation that I'm struggling with this, make sure that person is indeed, you can share confidential information, because you don't know if it's going to go back to your preceptor. But just in general, in professional environments, don't share a lot of unnecessary information. If you did not get enough patients, find the solution. Do you need to speak to the coordinator? Do you need to speak to your colleagues? And then take it to the doctor. just be very cautious. There is that hierarchy there. Did Doctors Rao and Farouk, did you experience any of this in your rotations?
So the thing is that when I was rotating with someone, this person was very enthusiastic, and enthusiastic as in like would try to get into all the or squiggle their way into all the patients room. And I get it, they're trying to get the same experience as you are. But the thing is, yes, being professional in that setting because you are becoming a doctor is very important. There's a time and place for everything, and how you speak and interact, because like Dr. Rao mentioned before, people talk, patients talk, your attendees will talk about you in their break room or coffee room. You may not hear it, but they will talk about this. They'll make us a story, like, oh, this person came from there, and all that. But I think if you're professional, you're nice, you're doing, it's okay to make mistakes at once, every now and again. It's good. It's to create experience. But yeah, you have nothing to worry about then. What do you think, Dr. Rao?
Tabby, could you repeat the question again? I'm sorry, I was just getting through those questions on the chat.
No worries. We were just talking about, when you're on these rotations, because they're so IMG friendly, you will have a lot of people there on with you. So if you don't get X number of patients, but your colleague gets more patients, is that something that you should explicitly say in a public area?
Public area is definitely a no-no. I mean, keep all the information to yourself, but if it's something that's really bothering you, so always reach out to the person who gave you that position. So if it's a program director or an assistant program director who is your immediate source of contact, do not hesitate to go sit down with them. First, ask for a meeting. Ask for if they say they do not have time, ask for a few minutes between, people are so nice that even when they have their lunchtime, dedicated lunchtime, they're okay to spend that time with you if it's something important for you. If something is really bothering you, it's okay to talk about it. Just ask for a couple of minutes to talk to them and just bring it up nicely. Don't say, hey, he got so many patients, I did not. Am I doing something wrong? No, first thing, the tone. Always be nice, always have a nice tempo. And secondly, you can just bring it up in a nice way, saying, hey, Dr. So-and-so, I was just getting a little concerned that, comparatively, do not take specific names, do not bring up one single person, or do not criticize anybody. Always, if you're talking about people or your medical school or any other medical school, talk about it nicely. But if you have anything negative to talk about that, don't speak out about that at all. You can just say comparatively, I think I am seeing lesser patients. Is that something that I should be worrying about? Bring that up in a nice way such that they will tell you that, yeah, it really does not matter. It's the quality that matters and not the quantity in this specific hypothetical scenario. But always be open to accept any role or position or work to give you, even if it is just carrying something from one place to another. Always be open to it. Don't show airs of superiority or saying, oh, this is too beneath me, because I have been in that position, and honestly, people have told them, and I have, it's been written on my letter of recommendation as well, that she is such a genuine, honest person that she is open to work always. And that's a quality that really stands out to me. Just a line about you, if somebody remembers, and if that line goes eventually on your recommendation letter, and during my interviews, people have told me that your letter said this, and that's glorious for me, because obviously you don't get to read your letter and you just hear it from people who have got the opportunity to read it. So always be open, always be nice, and just keep smiling, even if you're hurt. Don't cry in front of them, but yes, it will all go well.
Quality over quantity is always best.
Yes, I agree.
Dr. Tabby, another thing I wanted to mention was this is also regarding LOR type things. A lot of doctors will have you write the LOR for them and then submit it in. For that, I just want to say, be honest. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to see 10 patients a day. You can say 2 patients, but I've had like some patients have just, been upfront about it with the doctor in front of me, that they praised me that he did a great job or he was doing amazing, and I had them, and it felt nice in the moment. I was like, oh, a patient said this to me. And whether it was 1 or 2, the doctor remembered that, that like he's actually putting in the effort, he's doing the work. And if you're doing a rotation also, the first thing was be honest on your LOR, because you are writing this professionally to the doctor that will submit it. That's a whole nother process Dr. Tabby will get into. But after being honest, but just make sure that you are attentive, you're giving in your input. If you're having a meeting during that rotation, and if the doctor asks you, it's okay to be wrong, just, talk. Because this is, I would say it's a life lesson in the future as well. You are not going to be doing a solo job. There is always going to be team. There is always going to be colleagues professionally, and you have to learn how to interact with them, how to behave with them, and how to behave in a clinical setting around.
I cannot agree more. I'm sorry, just a last few words, Tabby. I would definitely really want to highlight what Dr. Farooq just said. Speak up. Even if you're wrong, it's okay. Always speak up. It's okay to speak up and get corrected on learning the right way, rather than just to be quiet and not being noticed at all. So, and to be able to speak up, you should be comfortable speaking. And that just starts with just interacting with somebody in public or in your shopping malls, just that you get comfortable talking in a professional setting eventually.
Absolutely agree with all of that. Especially in the beginning, when you're starting, it's nerve-wracking. You're in a new environment and you're like, well, maybe if I say this, it'll be taken this way. But as long as you're professional, you're kind, you're appropriate, no matter how you say it, your tone, like Dr. Rao said, will go through. One point I did receive a message about is if someone is a US permanent resident and they're looking for US clinical experience, is it frowned upon if they directly go to a hospital and ask them, like go to the GME office, the Graduate Medical Education office, or is it better to send email communication?
Dr. Farooq, should I start?
Go ahead.
I definitely think there is no right or wrong. If you're going to the GME office, you should make sure about the person that you're reaching out to, because you're sitting right in front of that person, and every body language and the way you speak, your content, everything matters. So usually the GME office, if you go in person, you might end up meeting just admins, because everybody has a calendar, everybody follows their calendar to the minute, and there will not be any faculty just sitting out there waiting for somebody to just drop by if we want to. And I would definitely say that, because it's hard for me to find my own mentors if I don't send them an email beforehand just to even have a 2-minute chat. So I would definitely suggest do your research before you do that. Make sure that no matter what you do, it will not be seen negatively. So like I said before, there's no right or wrong, but it's always easier and more nicer if you could just go through the appropriate channels, like reach out to the coordinator first, find out from them if it is okay to reach out to the APD or somebody, or before reaching out to the program director, reach out to the assistant program director, and then ask them for things. And if they direct you to somebody higher, then go to it. But going directly to a GME office, and it would rather be seen as confrontation rather than an honest, genuine request.
So for this is, there's nothing wrong in sending an email, but there's nothing wrong with also going to the office itself, but it's also how you present yourself, how you're talking to them. I think you will be talking to the admin for, like when I was in Houston, right? So the thing I did was I had nice clothes on, like nice clothes as in I was wearing appropriate clothing. I had a great tone and everything. And I asked them kindly, do you I'm a USIMG, I'm a student from Dow International Medical College, blah blah blah. Do you guys have US clinical experience here? Do you guys provide that? And I want to know. And she was nice, and after I talked to the admin, she introduced me to, this is our department. And then the department introduced me to the program director. And then that's how it happened. So again, like you said, there's no right or wrong answer to this question, but there's nothing wrong. Just don't be like, hey, I need a US elective experience, because if you approach me like that, I'm like, what is this person on? What is going on right now? So presentation comes a long way, and asking genuinely, like, don't be afraid to ask. If you're shy, it is like, I know a lot of people are shy and that's why they don't ask, they email rather than that. But if you're shy, it's a great opportunity to go in, ask about this certain program, be like, yeah, you've done your research, obviously do your research beforehand if they provide that, because a lot of hospitals don't. And if you've done your research, they provide that, then yeah, you can, nicely approach them and ask about it. There's
She's
no right or wrong.
I definitely agree with what Dr. Farooq just mentioned. And I think with that being said, I would like to highlight that first impressions matter. First impressions are always remembered. And secondly, if you've already emailed somebody and you still haven't received a response for a very long time, obviously because everybody is very busy, especially in the academic world, it's okay to go in person to ask, because it will just show a continued expression of interest. But frame your story really well. Just don't make it look like, hey, you did not respond, that's why I'm here. Rather say, I was looking forward to your email and I was really interested here, and I was just passing by and I thought I would really be interested in looking at the department and talking to you, something to make it look nice.
Thank you so much for all of that, doctors. One last point I wanted to discuss, and you guys are, anybody's welcome to send any questions they have. What do we say about WhatsApp communication, starting with our name that's displayed on WhatsApp? Because when you get a request from a new person, you obviously don't have their name saved. A lot of us want to keep our names reserved. And a lot of us might have pictures that are, not ourselves, our pets, anything like that. So if you are going to use WhatsApp as a professional platform, how would you name yourself and what picture would you use?
I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead,
I was
Dr.
answering
Farooq.
the question. Could you repeat that?
So if you were going to use WhatsApp as a professional platform, like it's being used nowadays, essentially to reach out to people, how would you put your display name, if you would put one, and what display picture would you put?
You know why I'm smiling about this, but obviously, guys, one thing I would do is, you are getting into a professional field. So make sure, even if you have WhatsApp, even if you have like an iPhone, Android, you know how you make a contact card and everything. If you decide to put a picture, do not put swords or like, weird pictures. That doesn't have a nice professional picture, because you are sending a message to another professional, and it comes a long way. Don't have like a blank things. And beside it, if you are writing your name, I would recommend write your full name. Do not put emojis next to it if you're sending it to another person, another professional doctor. Do not be like, squiggly lines or X. That doesn't look right. It's like, you want to be presentable, you want to be able to show that person you are a professional. And this doesn't just relate to doctors. This can relate to any job that you're going to, any colleague that you're going through. So yes, I make an adamant statement about this, is that please have a professional profile picture of yourself, have a professional name of yourself, and you can always write a subcategory, but do not put any weird emojis next to your name or underneath your description. Dr. Rao, towards you.
I completely second that. Just to be brief, I would say if you're using any platform as your professional platform, if you're reaching out to any doctor through any of your professional social networks, be it Twitter, Facebook, or LinkedIn, or nowadays WhatsApp, if you're using that platform to reach out to anybody or talk to somebody in your professional network, keep it professional, have a professional picture and write your name completely. Do not fake names, do not use home nicknames and stuff like that. For me, personally, I've never used WhatsApp to communicate with any of my mentors or any of the professional circles. So I just keep it personal. So anybody who wants to just text me on WhatsApp from any of the other universities, I know it's not in a professional level. So like I just chat with somebody from University of Washington, and she reached out to me because she was an IMG many, many years ago. But then we are not talking in a professional level anymore. It's gone a level, it's gone to a personal level now. So it's okay if I put a picture with my kid or with my family, because I'm not using to reach out to her. But if you're using any platform to reach out to anybody for the first time, then keep it professional.
All right, thank you so much for your time this morning, Drs. Farooq and Rao. I believe we don't have any more questions because our chat group is very silent. But if we do come up with questions, I did share the WhatsApp group link earlier and the Instagram page. So you guys are welcome to send that to us. Please also make a note that we have 3 more sessions in this series, not next Saturday, but the Saturday following. We will have the residency application. We'll go through the different things and the questions that we have today, LOR discussion on the 18th, and on the 25th, approach to interviews. And with that, we are going to wrap this up. It is a recorded session, so it will be available on the Google Drive. I believe I interrupted someone earlier. Do we have a question? All right.